Hey there, it's John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to another day of Eldritch Moon spoilers. So, spoiler season is starting to wind down a little bit. We'll be back tomorrow with another spoiler video, but then on Friday the full set will be revealed, and we'll begin our full set review, starting with all the white cards, and we'll work our way through the set as the week continues. Now, having said that, today we have 8 brand new cards to take a look at. There's some interesting ones here, so let's get started. We'll begin with Fortune's Favor, 1 blue and 3. This is an uncommon instant. Target opponent looks at the top 4 cards of your library and separates them into a face down pile and a face up pile. Put one pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. First off, let me say this looks like an incredibly fun Magic card, and I love the art that goes along with it too. I would just play this in limited if for no other reason than it's going to be a good time. This is going to be fun to play, and this is another card that in formats like Commander, for example, you just love to play something like this. It's fun, it's interactive. I love this design. I really love this card. Now, having said that, yes, there is a level of variance here. Your opponent is going to be able to decide what the piles are and even restrict some of the information from you. And because of that variance, I don't know if this will necessarily cross over very well into Standard. However, you got to look at it this way. I mean, worst case scenario, you're cycling this card and thinning your deck a little bit, and other than that, it just gets better from that point. There's so much strategy that goes into this, from the point of the opponent making the piles, deciding which ones to put face down, what cards to kind of hide from you. It's just awesome. And then from your end, deciding what you're going to pick and what you think your opponent's trying to fool you with. I just love this. Great design. Glad they made this card. If for no other reason, it's going to be incredibly fun to play. Next we have a Dark Salvation. It's a black in double X sorcery. This one's a rare. Target player puts X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield. Then up to 1 target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn for each zombie that player controls. Now, this week we've seen a lot of cards that really contribute to the idea of a competitive standard zombie deck. And this card, I think, pushed it over the top for me. I was getting there, that it could be a thing. I was getting there. This card, I feel like, is going to make it a thing in Standard. So we still have more cards to go. I'm sure there'll be more pieces to come as well. But I feel like at this point, the tools are there to make a pretty explosive zombie deck. So I guess we'll wait and see if it happens, but I do feel like it would be fast enough and consistent enough to get there. Talking about this card in particular, one thing I do want to point out, which I found kind of interesting, is even if you are not on the zombie plan, you could play this card or maybe even sideboard it in. If your opponent is on the zombie plan, you can target them for 1 black. You don't even have to give them any zombies by paying the X cost, and then you can give one of their creatures -1/-1 based on how many zombies they have. So I thought that was an interesting way to utilize this card aside from the more obvious way. So keep that in mind, and limited, especially if this is in your sideboard and your opponent's playing a lot of zombies, it could come in handy. Having said that, I think this is also going to be great in a zombie commander themed deck as well. Next we have a card that was spoiled as a Portuguese language spoiler, and loosely translated it's Chaos Reveler, 2 red and 6. This is a devil, and this will cost 1 mana less to cast for each instant or sorcery card in your graveyard. It has prowess, it's a 3/4, and when this enters the battlefield, discard your hand and draw 3 cards. Now, looking at this at first, I was trying to figure out, where does this fit? Like, what deck wants this? Limited, obviously, this will be a great card for you in Limited, because even if you're paying 6 for this, say, it's still a fair amount of value later in the game when you really could use the card draw. That's actually kind of awesome. Discard effects also could be an advantage, not a disadvantage in certain situations. Again, especially in Limited, if you have some Madness cards that are in red or red-black, or just some other cards you want to get in your graveyard for Delirium or whatever, you could use that to your advantage as well. So I think this is fantastic in Limited. It's going to be a card that might find a niche role in Constructed. Here's what I'm thinking: maybe Modern Storm? I don't know. And the reason I say that is just because I could have this card in my hand, I could just start to go off of my Storm combo, and once I get to the point where I have 6 instants or sorceries in my graveyard, I can play this for 2. It's another card that goes towards the Storm count, and I get to draw 3 more cards, and hopefully I can continue to go off. I don't know if it really fits and if it's necessary in that deck. Again, it would be something that I'd like to play test. I can't say for sure that it would really get there, but I don't know, just my early thoughts on this card, that maybe that's a spot for something like this. So yeah, let me know in the comments below if you're a Storm player, if you think this would be something that you'd want to try out. Next we have Falkenrath Reaver, and this costs a red and 1. It's a 2/2 vampire. Now, to my knowledge, I think this is the first time we've seen an actual red bear. This is a 1 in a red 2/2 with no drawback, and I don't think that's been printed before, so I think that's pretty cool. And it is a vampire, which obviously there are some good synergies with vampires in limited, so I think this is a great limited card. It's a bear. Bears are just fine in limited, and on top of that, if you're playing with other vampires that might be able to give this a little more advantage and a little more value, then it becomes even better. Next we have Nahiri's Wrath. It's red and 2. This one's a mythic sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this, discard X cards. Nahiri's Wrath deals damage equal to the total converted mana cost of the discarded cards to each of up to X target creatures and or planeswalkers. Okay, so I was looking at this card and I was trying to figure out like where it fits. First off, I will say I do think it's a limited bomb. I think the fact that you could pitch something, even if it's like a 4-drop, it's going to do a lot of damage, and it's not going to be hopefully any card disadvantage for you as long as you can take out at least 2 creatures or planeswalkers that your opponent controls. So I think it's not too hard to get value here. If you do have to go above and beyond to take care of a big creature, then it could become card disadvantage, but if you need to do it, maybe you just need to do it anyway. The other downside I would say to this card is it's a horrible top deck if you're in a draw-go situation, right? It's not going to feel real good to draw this, and then your next draw will be like a land or something like that. That wouldn't be great, but there is a lot of raw power here, so I do think it is a limited bomb. As far as Constructed goes, I was really kind of trying to wrap my head around this, and I don't know, again, the variance is an issue. It's a bad late draw, but I gotta say to myself, there's a lot of times where, I mean, discarding could be an advantage, and this is a discard outlet. So maybe like a reanimation type strategy. You have your big creature you want to reanimate, you're able to pitch it, and if your opponent's playing something faster, like a zoo style strategy, you're able to pitch something big, hurt their board state pretty badly, and then that reanimation target's now in the graveyard for you to reanimate later. I don't know if it would fit there, if there's like a modern version of reanimation that this could work in. Again, let me know in the comments below if you think that's even plausible. It would be something I'd want to play test and really think about and try to see if it really works in a deck like that, but just my initial thoughts on this one. Now, as far as standard goes, this one's interesting because my first thought was like, no, too much variance, I don't want it in my standard. But then the more I think about it, if you had a big creature, or just any big spell, I guess, and you're up against a lot of small creatures, like, oh, I don't know, humans, for example, this could be pretty devastating to a deck like that, and they could really run out of gas after a play like that. Maybe it's a sideboard card, so I don't know. Again, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around this one to see if it's something that you'd really want to fill a slot with, but I do think there's a lot of upside there. So yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this one. Alright, next we have Permeating Mass. This is actually kind of a fun card. 1 green, this one's a rare. It's a spirit, 1/3, and whenever this deals combat damage to a creature, that creature becomes a copy of Permeating Mass, which is kind of fun. Now, unfortunately, it is combat damage, so you can't use like Rabid Bite or something like that. But this is going to make your opponent really think twice about attacking in. First off, it is a 1/3, so early in the game, especially considering this is a 1-drop, it can really slow things down, especially if you're trying to build up a strategy like a Delirium strategy or something like that. You want to slow down the game. This card's going to be great at slowing down the game for you in limited. And if you can give this thing flying with an enchantment or something, it becomes very difficult for your opponent to deal with as far as getting combat damage across. They're not going to want to lose their best creature and have it turn into a 1/3, right? But what's awkward though too is once that happens, they have a copy, and then you have to think about how are you going to get around it. So I do think it's a good limited card if you're in a strategy that you're trying to slow the game down, and as long as you have a fair amount of evasion yourself to get past any potential permeating masses that end up on your opponent's side. So think very carefully about this card, probably before you include it in your limited build, but I think it will be good in some builds. Next we have Campaign of Vengeance, a black, a white, and 3. This is an enchantment uncommon. Whenever a creature you control attacks, defending player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. This is a good limited card. I would be very happy to play this in a lot of limited builds. Paying 5 for an enchantment, and hopefully I'll be able to get some immediate value out of it by attacking in. I think that's good enough. The only thing that's a little awkward about this card is if you're far behind and you can't afford to attack in, then this becomes a dead draw. And if you're far ahead and you were going to win anyway, then this kind of becomes a win more. There's a sweet spot where this card is good though, and that's when you're able to do a little bit of damage to your opponent. You're in a position where you can attack in but you can't finish them off, but this kind of helps build that momentum. It helps you get to a point where you can make more profitable attacks because their life's lower and yours is higher. That I like. So I do think it's definitely playable and limited. It might be a sideboard card. It might not be something you start out with. You might want to feel out your opponent's deck and just see how many creatures they're playing. If you have a lot of profitable attacks in game 1, or if you don't, if you do, then bring it in for game 2. But I do think this can be a decent card. Finally, last card of the day is Spell Queller, and this is a blue, a white, and 1. It's a rare spirit, 2/3 with flash and flying, and when this enters the battlefield, exile target spell with converted mana cost 4 or less, and when this leaves the battlefield, the exile card's owner may cast that card without paying its mana cost. So a nice little tempo play. As long as you can keep this thing alive, you keep that spell basically exiled. But once this does leave play, your opponent is able to play it, so you do want to keep that in mind. One thing that, I don't know, I kind of wish this could do this to any spell instead of just a 4 or less spell, but alright, I think that's fine. So where does this fit? Obviously, I think this is great in limited. Even if it's just a 2/3 flyer for 3 in limited, that's actually pretty good most of the time, so even with flash. So yeah, I would definitely play this. Even if that was the only value I was getting out of it, I would still play it. As far as other formats go, I mean, it's great for control if we thought control could get there in the standard meta. I don't know if I'm quite convinced yet. I mean, there's a lot of pieces out there. Someone can pull those pieces together and make something efficient. Blue-white control or maybe Esper control could exist, I think. But I don't know if we're quite there yet. Maybe post-rotation. So this is a card that I feel a little stronger about post-rotation, but right now it's a fine limited card. I will say that about it. Now, having said that, hey, those are the cards for today. We'll be back tomorrow with our last spoiler video, and then Friday we'll be back and we'll begin our full set review starting with all the white cards. So until then, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day.
Hey, thanks as always for watching. This video, like all my videos, was made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Even a donation of $1 helps me to keep growing this community and creating better quality videos for all of you. Check out our Patreon page for exclusive giveaways and future goals for the channel. If you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the MTG news, spoilers, set reviews, product openings, or finance videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a good day.